Without further ado, here's Ted Wynn from The Athletic. Appreciate you joining us, man.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. Good, man. I wanted to reach out to you because first and foremost, I love your love for our Detroit Lions, and I know you're big on film. And I just wanted to ask you, I guess, first and foremost, like with this defense struggling as it has been recently, do you think that's something more to do with personnel, or some of that with the X and O's and what AG's got going on?
Well, I think as far as the X's and O's, I appreciate Aaron Glenn for just trying as many things as he could. You know, like he throws the kitchen sink at opponents, knowing that they're going to struggle on the personnel side. I mean, I think from a philosophy perspective, he wants to play man coverage. He wants to get into those receiver spaces, but due to the injuries and just the lack of talent on the corner position, he wasn't able to do that. So they try to mix it up in the secondary. They tried different blitzes. They tried whatever they could to try to mess with the opponents. And I think you saw sometimes they were successful and they really got guys out of rhythm. And sometimes they just got like in the second half of the Niners game, I think talent took over. So it's definitely a personnel issue. It's hard to put too much on Aaron Glenn, but I will say that he's at least trying a bunch of different things. At least he's not just sitting back in one coverage and just getting murdered,
And sticking with that defense, a thing that the Lions struggled with, or they have struggled with over the past couple of years, is maintaining and kind of controlling rushing quarterbacks. Is that something that is a scheme thing, or is that just an NFL problem with guys that can get out of the pocket and make things happen?
I think partly it's an NFL problem, and I do think the Lions are just a very aggressive defense, and sometimes when you play a very aggressive style and you play a little bit more man coverage, then you're going to be susceptible to rushing quarterbacks. Sometimes you got to rush out your lane trying to create a pressure, and if you're playing some man coverage, then you're going to have your back turned to those quarterbacks. And also when you're trying to do a bunch of blitzes and have all these complicated designer schemes, it's hard to be very fundamentally sound against option plays and that sort of deal.
Now, I know you watch tons of film all across the league, and one of the more national stories for our Detroit Lions right now has been L'Jarius Sneed. And here in Detroit, we've listened to the press conferences of Brad Holmes. He's been big on not spending too much on external ads because of the risk there. Now, would they put the franchise tag on Sneed? Do you think that'd be a smart move for Lions to, I guess, give up assets and then reset the cornerback market with a guy of L'Jarius Sneed's caliber? Like, does he fit that aggressive defense here in Detroit?
I think he fits what Aaron Glenn wants to do perfectly. As far as being a man press corner, there wasn't many guys better than him last year. He can play inside, outside. He can play a little safety if you need him to play safety, and just the way he shut down some of the top threats in the league was just so impressive. And obviously, there's always going to be a risk when you move away from a scheme as good as the Chiefs and you move away from a defensive coordinator like Steve Spagnuolo, who is so creative in his usage. But just as far as just a pure talent perspective and what he does well, I think he fits what the Lions do. And if you really want to go for a home run and you really want to put it all in one basket this year, I think that's the type of move that you should make.
And now flipping to the other side of the ball, a couple years ago you did a amazing breakdown of Ben Johnson's run scheme and what the offensive linemen are asked to do in this blocking scheme. And looking forward to the draft, I've been pretty high on grabbing an interior offensive lineman there in the first couple rounds. I'm really in love with Cooper Bebe out of Kansas State.
Hey, Bebe.
How challenging would it be for a guy to come in out of college and be an immediate starter at left guard in the Ben Johnson blocking scheme?
I think it is pretty difficult because they run so much. They run a little bit of outside zone, a little bit of inside zone. They run gap scheme. They run their own creative kind of designer runs that Ben Johnson has. So it is a lot for a young rookie to come in and have to pick up that entire scheme. Not that it's impossible to do, but it's difficult. And maybe that is something you want to do, and maybe you're willing to kind of suffer through those rookie growing pains early in the season because it's going to pay off dividends later in the season. I mean, the Lions are a team that wants to go deep in the playoffs. They want to be a Super Bowl contender. continue to upgrade at that guard position, or then I think that's what you have to do.
Now, sticking with that Detroit Lions offense, you and I are both everybody, I should say, are big fans of Ben Johnson, what they got going on. With that being said, the offensive line included, actually, keeping Jared Goff clean, where do you think the Detroit Lions should value him with this contract coming up? Granted, like Ben Johnson being so involved with creating like such a, like, I feel like a dynamic scheme for him and almost any quarterback, and the offensive line versus, I guess, Jared Goff being a top-tier guy, or I guess paid like a top-tier guy. Where do you value him on the open market? What type of contract would you give him?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be that's one of the most difficult questions, I think, for any general manager or any front office decision maker have to be. Like, how much do you pay a quarterback that isn't quite elite, but is very good? And obviously, he's putting up elite type of numbers in this offense with an elite play caller. Like, how do you separate the player from the environment? And that's very hard to do. I mean, obviously, you can't let Jared Goff walk. I mean, that'd be like a crazy type of Moneyball type of move. But you at the same time, you have to pay him to keep the stability. And they're there every day with him in the building. They know what kind of player he is. I do think he has made some legitimate improvements from the time that he was a Ram, but I can't put him into that top 5 upper echelon type of quarterback, but you might have to pay him that type of money to keep him around. So it's going to be a difficult negotiation. I wish I could give you a better answer for this, but it's one of the more difficult questions that any football decision maker has to make when it comes to this exact type of scenario.
And sticking with the contracts on that side of the ball, we just saw Mike Evans ink a $26 million a year contract to stick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is also in negotiations for a contract extension coming off of his rookie deal. This is a first-team All-Pro guy. Even as a slot receiver, as someone that haters don't value as much because he's not the downfield threat as some of these other wide receiver ones you see in the NFL, what do you see the salary range of Amon-Ra St. Brown in this next contract?
Yeah, I mean, to me, he should be making Cooper Kupp type of money because he plays that role. And I think he could be just as productive, maybe not quite as productive as Cooper Kupp was last year, which was just, when he was putting insane type of numbers. But I think giving him a Cooper Kupp type of contract would make a lot of sense to me.
All right, now for the fun stuff, because I read your piece last week on J.J. McCarthy, a couple draft questions following the Combine. I guess, where are you with J.J. McCarthy as a prospect following the Combine? And is it, I don't want to say gross, but is it weird that he may fall into that top 15?
It is weird when, you're looking at it before the season and you're kind of watching Michigan a lot, and you just see Michigan don't pass, they're not passing the ball a lot. And it wasn't just because they were up big, and that was part of the reason why they didn't pass so much, because by halftime a lot of these games were already the lead already ballooned to double digits. But I mean, there were times on second and long they were running it a lot too. They just didn't want to pass the ball a lot. But watching the film, I think it's not because they didn't trust J.J. McCarthy. I think the Michigan pass blocking was pretty atrocious as well. They're a very good run blocking team, obviously, but their tackles just got overwhelmed at times. But when you watch J.J. McCarthy, and when I sat down and really broke down the tape, I saw first-round type of talent. He has a rocket arm, throws with a ton of velocity, supreme athleticism. I mean, he's not running a 4.3. He's not like in that Jaden Daniels type of guy, but he ran one of the best three-cone times for a quarterback in the last 10 years or whatever it was. So he's right on the ground. He could make throws on all 3 levels. And I think the most encouraging part of his tape is he works really well under pressure. He sidesteps pressure. He can get away and make plays out of structure. And I give him more of a second-round grade just because there's just not enough film of him making high-level passes and being a nuanced passer, deceiving coverages with his eyes and things like that. You don't see that, but you see the potential for it. So I gave him more of a second-round grade, but I know he's going to get, somebody is going to put him in the first round, and he might even get drafted, just outside the top 10. And there's some rumors floating around that he might even be be a top 10 quarterback.
And we appreciate you joining us. Of course, like your knowledge, it's amazing to have someone with your knowledge on the show. And before we let you go, I do just want to ask, do you think it is more likely for Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions to move up in the NFL draft or to move down out of the first round? Because we've seen him do both.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I would say simply because it seems like this is a year where you really want to put all the chips on the table. If there's a prospect that you really love, go up, get him, get an instant impact guy, and add to that, core group of young guys from last year. And if you get another impact guy or two in this draft, the Lions are going to be, right there in the NFC mix again, and they might even be Super Bowl contenders.
Ted, is there any top tier guys that you can see falling towards that back half of the draft? I guess specifically on the defensive side of the ball.
I think I am blanking on his name right now, but the corner from Toledo,
Quinyon.
Mitchell.
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell. I think he fits what Detroit wants to do, and he might be in that range where maybe they can move up to get him, or maybe they can sit back and draft him. But I think he's a guy that can make an instant impact and really fit exactly what Aaron Glenn wants in a corner.
I like that. That was an official visit for him at the Combine, formerly too. So yeah, I appreciate that. Ted, any articles you got dropping or anything you want to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, I'm just writing an article about who the quarterback 2 should be. There's some talk that Jaden Daniels might be the guy. So I'm just weighing his skills with Drake May and trying to come up with who's quarterback 2, and that should come out on Wednesday on The Athletic.
Ted, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. If you ever got anything cooking up for our Detroit Lions topic-wise, man, I'd love for you to reach out. I'd love to have you back on the show, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.